Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. We did not have a show last week because of just the scheduling situation. Kind of had to make a call on whether or not we were going to do one even before we knew what the regional brackets were going to look like, and they had those draws on Friday morning, and then it turned out rain also kind of messed with Monday a little bit before it's all said and done. But anyway, so we didn't have a show last week. There were regional tournament games in the 4th region, baseball and softball, all day on Monday, and that's really where we're going to kick off. And we're going to back up a little bit to the end of the 15th district tournament because we didn't get a chance to talk about that last week. But let's start on the softball side, but mainly because the Barren County Trojanettes killed a dragon, I suppose, slayed a gator, as it was on Monday on that first round of the tournament. You, as a head coach at Barren County, had been a victim to Greenwood's seeming dominance over Barren County through the years, especially they'd never beaten them in the regional tournament. But yeah, Barren played exceptionally well on Monday against Greenwood. They got down early and then came back and won the game 9-4. After the first couple of innings, Shea Bogue was really good in the circle for the Trojanettes. And so, they got over that hump and beat a team they'd never beaten before, I think, in the regional tournament. I think maybe Barren had only beaten Greenwood like twice in the history of the matchups, maybe 3 times. So, it was an impressive win for Barren to get out of the gate there in that 4th region softball tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're going to start with the region or the district?
We'll start with the region and back up to the district.
Okay, back up, okay. Yeah, I was thinking about it. It was one of the probably top 3 or 4 wins in school history, I'd say, in softball.
Yeah.
The defeating Greenwood 9-4, and Greenwood was. It's not like it was a down Greenwood team.
No, they were good.
It was a really good Greenwood team, and give Bogue a ton of credit. Mm-hmm. I mean, she only allowed 2 earned runs. Allowed 4, but 2 earned.
Yeah, there were a couple of errors in the first inning.
A couple of errors. They got behind too.
Yeah,
and they got behind early, and I was thinking, oh boy, the worst thing to do, especially when we've had a hard time defeating the Greenwoods and those teams, to get behind early and almost like who were trying to climb uphill the whole time and so forth. But man, did they battle back. Katie Elmore's 3-run homer was big.
Yes, it was.
Nora Shirley and Katie Murphy and I think Monty Forster all had 2 RBIs too. So the battle back after being down, I thought the homer was huge. But then just the relentless battle back, and then Shea Bogue just kind of settling in. Didn't strike out a lot of people, which you didn't really expect her to strike out a lot of the Greenwood kids. But she put the ball in good placement. Yeah. Defensively, after the first inning or so, Barren was really, really solid. And to come up with kind of a runaway 9-4 win against right. a powerful Greenwood program. Like I said, it's one of the better wins in school history, and just that was a great win for the Trojanettes.
Well, and one thing going back to Bogue that I thought was interesting as the game went along, I mean, throughout the season, she was kind of placed in the duty just because of the pitching change and kind of, was a little shaky at some times, but Barren hit the ball so well, that they were winning games anyway for the, I mean, they only lost 1 game after fall break, and so, spring break. And so that gave her the opportunity to kind of settle in, but she's never really very demonstrative, not very emotional. She's a pretty low-key kid. But in that game, as that game went along, man, she got more and more fired up. And I was just impressed with that because, if you think about her sisters, Eva and Cora, neither one of them were all that emotional and demonstrative while playing sports. So, it was fascinating to see that come out in her, and it was really showing up in the way she was pitching in the game as well. And I was like, that's really awesome to see this kid in this situation. First time ever being in that situation. As Coach Murphy mentioned, she wasn't even, on the varsity roster last year. I mean, she is just a freshman, but there were 8th graders on the roster last year. She was not one of them, and so just get pressed in the situation. And after that first inning, she just was real calm in that game.
Yeah, she was. She was, it just steady, and then, to come back against Greenwood. That was a big-time performance.
Yeah. And so then they come back and they face Russellville, and they got in the hole again. But I will tell you this. those first 3-4 batters for Russellville may have been the best 4, at least in that particular game that I saw this year, in terms of getting on base. And then once they're on base, I mean, they were just aggressive. And hitting the ball was pretty impressive, too. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, they're not always like that because Barren beat them pretty handily, at the end of the regular season. But they were pretty impressive in that game. And actually, Russellville was impressive in that tournament as well.
Yeah, I mean, the final was 10-6.
Yeah.
But it was another come from behind. I think Barren may have been behind 3-0, something like that.
3-0 at top of the first.
Top of the first again. Just got off to a slow start, and Russellville's been impressive the last few years. The coach down there has done a really, really good job, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And they can't even field a baseball team.
Right.
I mean, they canceled in season.
Yeah.
But they find enough not only to field a softball team, to be a competitive softball team.
Yeah.
And, again, another come from behind, 10-6 win. Gracie Might, she had a great tournament, by the way.
Yes, she did.
She had 3 RBIs in that game, but she also hit throughout all 3 games as a sophomore. Thought she was really good. Mia Long was 2 for 2 and 4 RBIs as well. I mean, she's really not known. She's more known defensively than anything, but she had a big hit in that game. So it was a game that Barren was, especially after the Greenwood game, this was almost like a trap game.
Yeah.
Russellville they were expected to win. In fact, Barren, the last week of the season, run ruled Russellville. So it was one of these trap games where Barren was kind of expected to win, but it wasn't quite as easy as people may have thought. But still, it got them to the finals.
Yeah, and in that game, going back to the Shea Bogue situation, I mean, that 3 runs in the first inning was a solo home run and a 2-run homer. And, again, you have a freshman pitcher in the circle facing these kinds of circumstances for the first time. A lot of times that leads to disaster.
It is. That's not exactly the start that you want.
No. So, I mean, she again got control of herself in the game. And then, like I said, Barren hit the ball extremely well. Played defense better in that game, really, than they did in the Greenwood game. Because if you look at it, Russellville earned pretty much every run they got in the game. I think maybe Shea walked a couple, but in terms of they put the ball in play, hit the gaps, and then when they got on the base path, they were burning. So kind of unlike the Greenwood game where she really only gave up 2 earned runs, Russellville really put a lot of pressure on her, but Barren played good defense, and then she settled in there.
Russellville probably hit the ball better against Barren than Greenwood and South Warren.
I would agree with you 100% on that. I mean, it certainly they played. Going back to the numbers, I think my son made this comment about there were probably more people in street clothes in the dugout than actual players for Russellville. I think they only have about 13 players. I mean, they start 9, and those 9 they play defense, and Ryan Davenport will bring in basically one girl to run in certain circumstances and that kind of stuff. But I mean, that's also what makes it impressive is he's got not big numbers, but he's turning those numbers into quality softball. But anyway. Yeah, it was. So that game was interesting in that sense that Russellville, you're right, did hit the ball better than Greenwood or South, and really put a lot of pressure on Barren. And I think that maybe kind of got them prepared. It was kind of good to have that game, I think, maybe before the South Warren game.
I agree.
Even though they had the day off, they were tested in every game and had responded. So there was not like a walkover, that kind of stuff going in, and they were sharp. And overall, they played well against South Warren.
South Warren, the final was 4-2.
Yes,
and it was an electric atmosphere. I was out of town. I was in Lexington, but I watched it. I got to see it on one of the broadcasts. And listen, it's not easy sometimes to go to as a spectator to a softball regional tournament game at Western. Because if you don't get seats behind home plate, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And now it's the parking structure, and if you can see the video. There's the parking structure. There's people hanging over the structure on every level.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of impressive to see that, to be honest with you. But South Warren has been 1 or 2 in the state all year. They've been number 1. Lexington Catholic's been number 1. They've kind of gone back and forth all year.
Yeah.
37-3. A very young team. I think that's what's kind of dangerous about South Warren. I mean, they are sophomores and under, and arguably the best hitting team in the state.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they have I think over 50 homers. I mean, McLean Hudson had 20. Was it? I mean, she's double-digit homers.
Yeah, like 21 or so.
21 or so. That's correct. She's second in the state. And if you had told me beforehand that Barren would hold South Warren to 4. Mm-hmm. I don't think you could ask for any better.
No.
I mean, that really elevates Barron's chances of getting a win. And they almost pulled off a win, lost 4-2, but to hold them to 4 was very impressive. Again, Barren got behind, but
it wasn't just one explosive inning. I mean, South Warren just kind of chips away at you.
That's correct.
And they're aggressive on the base path. I mean, if they get somebody on,
they could easily win the state.
Oh yeah.
Now they're in a terrible bracket. The top 5 teams in the state are all in the same bracket, South Warren. But Barren, all you can ask for when you're the underdog. Barren County, we've never won a region in softball. South Warren number 1 in the state. The only thing you can ask for is to have a chance. Mm-hmm. And boy, they had a chance. Last inning, 4-2. Barren had runners on second and third with 2 outs, so they had a shot after Katie Murphy had doubled to make it 4-2. Second and third, so they had a chance. A 3-run homer or a hit or anything like that could have tied, could have put them ahead. Now, you still had to hold South Warren was a home team. You still have to hold them.
Right.
But, man, they put themselves in a great position for an upset. And just, sometimes it's just a big hit here or a big catch or something. Sometimes it's just a fine line between winning and losing.
Well, I think that's the 3rd time Barren County's been in the regional final. They lost the year that you were the head coach. They lost to Allen County 3-0, right? 2004.
Yeah.
And then was it 2011, 12, something like that? They lost to Allen County like 3-2. Maybe it wasn't that. I don't remember exactly.
We lost in the finals of the region when I was assistant to Billy Lindsay back in 97 or 98.
Oh, so maybe 4 times been in the regional final?
Yeah, we got to the finals and lost to Greenwood then.
Okay. And then another time to Allen County, I think it was 3-2. That was when Angie Vaughn was there. They lost in the finals to Allen County 3-2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you look at, I don't know what the score was whenever you guys, when you and Billy were coaching.
Close.
But all 3 times that I looked at, and I didn't see that one, but the 3 times I looked at, every game has been close. Barron's had a real good chance. And if I recall, the 3-0 game was basically, there was a big hit in the game. It was 0-0, like deep into the game, as I recall.
Yeah.
And Allen basically scored 3 runs in an inning, and that was the difference in the game. So, I mean, it's every time they've gotten there, they're almost there. And I think
Well, to get there, the reason why they're generally close when you get there is because to get to that finals of the region, you're going to have to go through one of the Bowling Green schools to get there anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you can't avoid having to go through them probably twice.
Right.
I mean, you got to beat one of them, and then you got to beat them in the finals. That's how it works out. 99% of the time, you at least have to beat one of them. Mm-hmm. A couple times you had to beat Allen, your own district opponent, again in the finals, but you still had to go to the Bowling Green schools. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, you're pretty darn good because you've already knocked off some good teams to get there.
Well, and so that's kind of what I was getting at with this is that the interesting thing is, if I was looking at this before they actually played South Warren, and I picked out at least 5 other regions. If you'd have parked Barren County in them, they would have been the best or second best team.
Oh, there's no doubt.
And they would have won 4 or 5 of them, I'm pretty certain.
No question.
So when you look at the history of this region and Barren County's trips to this region, I mean, you go back to, I think it was 2006, they lost to Greenwood in the semifinal game 10-0 in the 8th inning. Mm-hmm. And Greenwood went on, I think, and actually Greenwood lost to Allen County that year, but I think they won the state championship like the very next year.
Right.
So you look at this region, and if you were the second best team in this region, as Barren has been a number of times, or 3rd or 4th best, I mean, that puts you as one of the top 25 teams in the state pretty much every year.
It is.
It's just an impressive region when it comes to softball.
And one of these days we'll knock the door down, you would hope. But, it's not just – unlike basketball where it's just the Bowling Green schools.
Yeah.
They've also – Allen County's been a state power. They've won a state championship too. So it's just not that. So it is, and it's when you get beat 4-2 in the regional finals, but you play well, and you have a chance to win. You shouldn't have any regrets. If you go out and you get blown out and you're never in, and you make a bunch of errors, it's one thing. But
right.
We were right there. And in that game, the bottom of the order was big, too.
Yes.
Just in that last inning, I think it was Lizzie Smith got a big hit.
Yes.
In fact, she was 2 for 3. And then the catcher, Briley,
Adala,
she had a big hit, a couple RBIs, too. So if you just look at I think what's impressive about Barron's lineup is that, Katie Murphy, great player, 590, 7 home runs for the year and 59 RBIs. I mean, Katie Elmore had 9 homers, hit 419. Riley Reed hit 450 something, but they had good players. They all did something. Monty Forster had a big tournament. Nora Shirley had 8 home runs, and then we mentioned Gracie Mott and some of these other kids too. I mean, they were good up and down the lineup.
Well, and that was one of the things I think I talked to the players about, after both of those interviews, is the bottom of the order throughout this regional tournament and probably even in the district, which we'll get back to that district final here now. The bottom of the order, unlike a lot of teams, when they came up, you were like, all right, we're going to get back to the top and probably have runners on.
They were structured like, this is a compliment, like the powerhouse Bowling Green schools. I mean, South Warren's the same way.
Yeah.
There's no weakness in that lineup.
Right.
Greenwood's best teams, there's no weakness. I mean, the bottom just turns it back over to the top. Whereas you have, in a lot of situations too, you may have the top 4 or 5, but you can almost take a deep breath on when you get down 7, 8, 9. It's not that, but not with Barren and not with your top teams. Everybody is a competitive hitter.
Yeah. And, going back to the district final, we mentioned Allen County being in the district and what they've been in the past, but, Warren East is a recent powerhouse in softball now in that district, and that was Barren and Warren East in that championship game. And there was twice in that game that Warren East had Barren in pretty bad situations, I think, with 2 outs. And the Trojanettes got big hits and ended up winning the game 8-5. It was an impressive, starting even there, it was an impressive performance by them to kind of overcome, adversity and get into overcome the tough situations.
I said all along when there was some worry, I think, at times when Warren East came into the district. And I said all along, I think it's going to elevate the district.
Yeah.
You may take some losses and things like that, and you've seen that in soccer and you've seen that in some other things. But all in all, it's going to elevate your baseball. It's going to elevate your softball. It's going to elevate your play because Warren East has a good tradition of athletics, and to beat Warren East 8-5, and that's back-to-back years, right? The Barrens won the district. I think Coach Murphy maybe now won 5 districts. Something
I believe that's correct.
5 or 6, something like that. It's with East in it, and Allen's been a state power and so forth, and Glasgow's had good teams throughout the years. At times they've been down lately, but still, that's a heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's been a good run, and we'll say goodbye to the 4 seniors who've had good runs there. Katie Murphy obviously is the one that kind of just jumps off the page because of her stats and the fact that she's going to go play at WKU and has been an outstanding player, I think, since the 7th grade in softball.
No question.
So
overcame an ACL injury and just had probably her best year.
Yeah, and Daryl Murphy getting the opportunity to coach his daughter for all those years, and the great run they've had together, and the struggles this past year for both of them health-wise and what they've overcome.
Yep.
And
it's a great year for the program.
Yes. And then you have Riley Reed. She's kind of unassuming out there, but, can slug the ball. Monty Forster coming. She hadn't played, I don't think, since her freshman year. She had been at Warren East and had given up the game.
Yep.
Focused on volleyball and came back and played this year and had a solid season for him. And Mia Long, who we don't really talk about a lot because, like you said, she's more of a defensive specialist.
She said that in her interview, right?
Yes.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, but you look at that game against Greenwood. She hit a BB out to center field, I think it was, and then maybe that was the Russellville game.
Russellville, I think.
Yeah, she had a BB out there. May have been the best hit I've seen her have all year. Now, I've not seen all their games. And then she did the thing she always does is drop a bunt down the first baseline and beats them all to first base. And so, there have been some outstanding moments. And look, she had – you talk about Katie Murphy's defense at shortstop throughout the tournament. Mia Long had an outstanding defensive tournament as well. She, I think, set up a double play, had a couple of outstanding stops there. So, they're going to miss those guys. And
they're going to be good next year, but they lose some really good players. But Barron's got a good program. They're JV and middle schools got a good program. Of course, the pitcher's back.
Right.
And Katie Elmore's back. They got some good players, but they also have some positions that have to be filled, and but that's what happens. You can't, just sign players and play there forever. Graduation. Graduation is part of it. So there's other people who we may now the common Joe may have never heard of them, but could be ready to step right in there and be good players.
Yeah. On the baseball side, the Trojans ended up losing in the district final to Warren East. It was it's 16-4 was the final score, but they got it to within like 5-4, I think it was, and looked like they were going to get back in the game
into the sixth.
And then Warren East just started clocking the ball. They scored 10 runs in an inning. It was a pretty incredible performance, I thought.
Yeah, Barren kind of ran out of pitching late in the year a little bit. Their pitching they lost
Skylar Potter,
to an injury, and at one time it looked like possibly the strength of the team was the depth of their pitching. Kind of, I'm not going to say betrayed them, but it did seem like at the end of the year the pitching kind of was a problem. Even the first round against Allen, it was a kind of a slugfest for that game. I think that game was
16-6.
16-6.
Yeah.
And then we got to the region against a good Greenwood team. To be honest with you, Tristan Meach was. I don't know if he had his best stuff, but get beat 6-1. A little bit wild at times, and there were some tough calls that probably could have gone either way, one way or the other. It's not the reason why Barren lost, but in the course of the game, there were some momentum calls, I'll call it that way, but just could not solve the Greenwood pitching and so forth, and went out 6-1. Overall, a really good year. I think Barren won. I think they won 20-9, something like that. A really good year, 20-10 against with a very, very difficult schedule.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the year, the pitching just kind of, which is one time was a strength, kind of ran out of pitching late in the year.
Well, and I will go, like, the Warren East game, there were two things that kind of stood out to me, both from the Warren East game and the Greenwood game. And it wasn't so much the pitching or defense. They ran into two teams back-to-back games that seemed to just be hot with their bats at that particular time of the season. I mean, they were hitting really good, because you go back and look at the stats. I don't think there were a few walks, but, I mean, mostly those two teams just hit the ball exceptionally well in those two games. And the fact that Greenwood only scored 6 runs, considering how they hit the ball in that game against Barren, I thought was overall a pretty decent performance by Barren defensively. But meanwhile, on the offensive side, really in both games, Barren had been putting up quite a few runs, I think, and they also weren't able to kind of keep up run-wise in both of those games. Certainly not with 16, but, I mean, even the 6-1. But going back to what you said about the schedule and the record and the season, Tristan Meach was the only senior. They're definitely going to miss him.
They're going to miss him. He was a number one pitcher for their team. Yeah,
and he was hitting the ball extremely well at the end of the year.
Right. But again, coach does a really good job.
Yeah,
he's an excellent baseball coach. They got all their positional players back. Got much of the pitching staff back, and got some good young ones too. I mean, the future is very, very bright for the Barren.
Yeah. So. And as it turns out, Russell County was the team to beat in the region once again.
It's one of the few predictions I got right. I said beforehand I thought it was going to be Russell County or Warren East.
Yeah.
I love Warren East's depth in pitching. They had 3 quality starters, and Russell County's Russell County. I mean, they can hit. They got good enough pitching. And give Russell County credit. The 3 teams, they earned it. They beat Logan, who's really good. That was 7-6. Beat the Greenwood, we talked about in the semifinals. And then blew out Warren East in the finals.
Yeah.
I mean, they went through arguably the 3 best teams in the region.
And the interesting thing was it looked like during the course of the season this was not as good a Russell County as they'd had the last 2 years. It turns out it didn't matter.
It didn't matter, yeah. And in fact, they had to come back against Logan. They came back in the 7th to beat Logan.
Yeah.
But, man, they got some great karma in Russell County in terms of baseball. Coach Rexroad is a heck of a coach.
Yeah.
Because they were in the state finals, what was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah, when they were loaded.
And now they're back again, and it's just a culture that just produces. I don't think anybody in the state thinks, when you think of baseball, where's the baseball players at Russell County? Of all places, Russell County.
Yeah.
But, man, they come down here every year, and they compete like crazy in this region, and they're just really, really good. Again, they got a tough draw. If they win their first game, they're staring at, I think, Trinity. I think is in their bracket or whatever. I think they play Simon Kenton the first
That's
game.
right. They play Simon Kenton.
Team that I think will beat.
Yeah.
But then they'll have to go through Trinity. The South Warren girls got a tough draw. They got E-Town. I think they can beat E-Town.
Yeah.
But they're in there with Lexington Catholic, which is giving South Warren one of their 3 losses.
Right. That would be the second round game, I believe.
That's correct. But also McCracken and Henderson County are all in that bracket. The top bracket, I don't know if there's a top 10 team in the state in the top.
Yeah.
So it's the bottom bracket. I mean, if South Warren wins it, they've got to earn it.
Well, and going back to the E-Town thing, the 5th region was one of those regions I'd looked at and said if you put Barren in that region, they'd have won.
It was down this year.
Yeah.
Definitely down.
Because, I think Central Hardin was supposed to be the team that everybody thought might be able to win that region this year.
Yeah.
And we got to see them when they came and played at Barren County, and they were a fine team. But Barren, it was clear they weren't as good as Barren at that particular time, and it turns out they weren't as good. I think they were ranked in the top 10 early in the year. So, I don't know, but that was one of those regions I looked at, and I said if Barren had been in that region, they probably would have won that.
The most interesting of all things, and this is a little off the subject, was the 5th region winner in baseball was LaRue.
Yes.
Who had lost at one time 10 in a row.
Yes.
And they had a losing record going into the last week of the season.
Yes.
They pulled this same thing off last year.
Yes. Which I had forgotten.
They did the exact same thing. I got a friend of mine that I played Legion ball with, and I played with him at University of Louisville. Chris Rogers is one of the assistants.
Yeah.
And I caught him after they won the region. They knocked off Washington County 5-4 in 15 innings.
Yes.
And he was telling me, he said, it's the craziest game you ever heard of. He said in the 13th inning, it's 4-4.
Uh-huh.
Washington County's the home team. Washington County has bases loaded, nobody out in baseball. In the bottom of the 13th, they just score 1 run, they win.
Yeah.
And he said it was we pulled a triple play to get out of the inning. he said it was an infield pop-up that we dropped the ball in Washington County. You're automatically out on the infield fly.
Yeah.
Washington County went ahead and ran. You can do whatever you want to.
Yeah.
But they got confused because the ball was dropped, and they ran, and they pulled a triple play.
Oh, my God.
How'd you like to lose that way?
I mean, that's
How'd you like to lose when you think you got your base loaded, no out, all you do is score 1 run, you win it.
Yeah.
And you end up hitting a triple play and then losing the region.
Well, let me ask you a question. So you're coaching in that situation, right?
Yeah.
Let's put you in coaching in that situation.
Right.
You got bases loaded, no outs. Do you try the squeeze play twice in a row to try to get a run?
Because it's a force out.
Well, it's true, yes.
It's a force out. If it's second and third out, you would consider bunting, but a bunt, the only thing you had to do is field it and just toss it to the catcher.
Yeah, so you're kind of you can't. There's no tricks. You really kind of have to try to get a hit, huh?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. No, I wouldn't do that at all. I wouldn't, because you can pop up, get doubled off, or I wouldn't think of a triple play though.
True. Yeah, that's one that's going to haunt those guys for the rest of their lives, I imagine, if they keep playing baseball.
That's exactly right.
They'll 20 years when they
That's
have
a
their
nightmare.
reunion.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, 20 years when Washington County has their reunion, they're going to be like, do you remember how we lost that game?
Yep.
We had bases loaded. Anyway, yeah, I'd forgotten that. I remembered after I saw the score that LaRue had won the region last year. But I had forgotten it was the same thing. Like they just weren't very good all year long, and then suddenly they just
got red hot.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. This is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. It's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we don't have any high school state champions to speak of this year in track and field. It's something that we've had the last few years, both at Barren and Glasgow. But, I mean, we had several qualifiers for the 3A meet for Barren County and 1A meet for Glasgow. It's just that apparently the competition was pretty tough this year because I think going in for Glasgow, we had Lucas Christian in the 300 hurdles. I thought he would have a chance to win that. And then, of course, we talked about Chesney McPherson in the 3,200. I think she finished second in it last year, and so, she had a pretty good chance, we thought, to win that or at least finish, top 2 again. But it just didn't quite work out this year for us. So, our run of state champions is at an end. Maybe it'll come back, but overall, we had quite a few people up there running.
Yeah, well, Chesney had a great career.
Yes.
You're talking about an unbelievable career that just – through her work ethic, it's just unbelievable how she transformed her body and from her freshman year all the way to her senior year, earned a scholarship to the University of Kentucky.
Yeah.
I was looking at her splits in her 3,200. She was right there with the winner. In fact, they blazed. What I could tell, her splits and the other girls' splits, they were almost dead even. And she was right up there with her for the first four laps maybe, and then I don't know if she went out too fast or whatever. I think she ended up fifth or whatever.
Yeah.
But the point I'm making is she put herself, but just by looking at it through what I saw online, I didn't see the race. It looked like to me she gave herself a chance, and didn't work out. But all you can do is put yourself in position, and to win. If you don't win, you don't win, right?
Yeah.
And so great career, and just happy for her. So she competed up there. Riley Wilson, who won the region in, I think, the disc and the shot, right?
Discus and the shot, yes.
Right. She probably didn't have her best performance either, but that's a brand new experience for her because she's kind of exploded onto the scene.
Yeah, just a sophomore. I mean, she wasn't even on the radar last year.
Came out of nowhere, but she'll build on that and so forth. She had a fantastic year, and I expect a lot bigger and better even next year. For her. So
yeah.
So
and then on the boys' side for Barren, we had Brody Miller. I mean, he's
his time was good, but man, it is
that group is so strong.
It really is.
I mean, in that mile, that group that's got to be one of the strongest groups in the country, I would guess.
Right.
If you just took the top 20 out of Kentucky, because if you go and look, at these regional competitions and that kind of stuff that are not high school associated, you'll find a lot of those same guys in those meets.
Yep.
When you go look at those Indiana regionals and that kind of jazz, I mean, they're always there. Or the Eastern relays in Kentucky that bring a lot of people in. These dudes that are in this group with Brody Miller are some of the strongest around.
Yeah, that's a tough event too. When you're running the mile under 5 minutes.
Yeah, 4:48 or whatever it was, and you still finish like in 10th or whatever it is. You got to look around and say, "Man, I'm good, but I'm unlucky in a way."
That's tough. Yeah.
And then I think Lucas Christian, he did finish 7th in the 300 hurdles. He did not have his best day in that particular event. I think he went in as 1 or 2 in that event in the 1A. So he kind of had an off day, but he competed in 3 events at the state meet, ran that, the 110 and the triple jump. So that's a lot to ask of a person these days, considering I don't think you see a bunch of people who compete in 2, but not in 3 or 4 events, especially not qualify for state in them. So, he also a senior. He's had an outstanding career. And then I think Cynthia Austin she finished 5th in the triple jump for Glasgow, which was the best finish for any of the Glasgow competitors. They had a couple of relay teams, girls that finished 7th and 8th. I think she was on both of those, and then along with maybe Taylor Wilson and Danica Stevens, and Brianna Brown, I think, is the other girl who runs in those relays with them. So, overall, some pretty good performances at the state meets, but not at the level we've seen in the last couple of years. But, the golden age of those state track champions were a little bit of surprise to us. They kind of came out of nowhere in their own right with, Taylor Ogles, Caroline Murphy, and that kind of stuff. So, we got a number of younger ones who probably should make it back next year and have a chance.
Yep.
You mentioned Riley Wilson. Cynthia's just a junior, so we have a number of them that'll probably make it back next year.
Gracie Reed.
And Gracie Reed, yeah. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
We're going to talk about a thing that we talk about every year about this time, even though we sparsely talk about the sport itself, that being college baseball. I enjoy the college baseball postseason quite a bit, the regionals, super regionals, World Series. I think John does too. And really this year, it looked like, at least on day one of the regionals, that there might be possibilities of some real upsets because there were a couple of teams higher rated teams that took it on the nose on that first day, but everything seems to have kind of leveled out with a couple of exceptions so far, John.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it's has not been a ton of upsets. Arkansas getting beat, I think that was probably one of them.
Yeah.
But Kentucky, the 2 overall, they did their job. They run defeated in theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Beat Indiana State in the finals. Central Michigan, Illinois, I think too.
Yeah.
They won theirs. Tennessee got through theirs, beating, I think, Southern Miss, and I was trying to think who else they beat.
Indiana.
Northern Kentucky and so forth.
Kentucky, yeah.
So they got out of theirs. 4 ACC teams and 4 SEC teams have moved on to the final 16, the super regionals.
Yeah. You mentioned the Fayetteville Regional, which was the Arkansas one.
Yeah.
Kansas State, the 3 seed, has come out of that one.
Right.
And then the only, right now, the only other one is Oregon, the 3 seed, won the Santa Barbara Regional. Evansville
just knocked off East Carolina.
Okay.
First time in school history they've made it to the super regional.
Well, and that was the other one I was checking out because I noticed you don't see Evansville very often mentioned in the baseball powerhouse
Don't
area.
you have in LSU, North Carolina tonight?
I believe that is correct. And LSU, I mean, look, I thought they were toast yesterday, and then they exploded to come back and win that game.
They can mash it.
Yeah, here's how LSU is. The last year they were middle of the pack SEC and then won a national title.
Yeah, of course they had the number 1 pick in the draft too.
True.
And the 2 pick. They had they had the hitter who's I think instantly he's playing for Texas right now. Mm-hmm. And they got the pitcher who's pitching for Pittsburgh.
Right. And so, they again this year they're kind of middle of the pack SEC, but I would say again don't be surprised if they're right there at the finish line again. And also the SEC, getting down to the title side of things, I mean, they've dominated since the 2020 COVID year. I mean, it's been SEC chalk so far winning the titles.
Right.
And not the same team every year.
No.
I mean, it's Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, and, this year it could be Tennessee. I mean, I don't know.
Kentucky.
Or Kentucky, for that matter. Yes, you're right. Very good team this year. I mean, what has made Kentucky so good this year?
I haven't watched them enough, but I have seen them some. I mean, obviously, you have to have pitching, though. Pitching is – I mean, the hitting is just way over the top right now with pitching.
Yeah.
It's hard to find enough pitching, to be honest with you. You just look at some of these scores, games, where you're scoring 10, 12, 14 runs a game.
Yeah.
But Kentucky is, their catcher is really good. His last name is Burks. You're talking about somebody who has just a tad bit of charisma and confidence and so forth. Watching Kentucky play at home, you probably need to watch them in the Super Regional. I mean, they've got a new ballpark, and they've got I will say this in general with college baseball: there is not a more confident group of athletes. And there is a real fine line between confidence and cockiness, and I think a lot of teams stretch over to cockiness.
Yeah.
Nobody more confident in the world than a college baseball player.
Right. Yeah.
And it's funny in one sense. It's a little bit it irks me in another sense, but there is a lot of
some personality out there.
Personality in baseball. Tennessee.
Well, that was when last year
Tennessee,
I was really happy Tennessee didn't win it.
Yeah, I mean they've been the poster boy for confidence.
I apologize to Carl Napier for making that comment, but I could not stand
they're not as
them
bad
last
this year.
Yeah,
they're not as bad. But Kentucky's the same way. I mean, they just. But yeah, I mean Kentucky is they're the 2 overall seed.
Yeah,
I mean Tennessee's the number 1 overall seed. So college baseball is, but there's a lot of offense, a whole lot of offense, and I don't know if it's exactly why, other than I think it's just hard to find enough pitching depth anywhere.
Well, and I think that's why I kind of enjoy the postseason and even like a lot of times
long games though. You have to be honest with you. It takes a long time to get through a lot of the games.
Yeah, well, the pitch clock I think has helped out.
It has helped, but it hadn't helped the pitching changes.
No.
They need to put them on like a railroad. They need a train to get them from the
send the golf cart out there to pick them up and drive them in instead of watching them jog out there.
That's correct.
That's always the common joke, right? You're going to take a break. It'll be a 5-minute commercial break as he comes out of the bullpen. But I do think that's the deal. That first game, you're kind of getting each team's best because they really want to try to get that in the Generally. Now, sometimes not.
Kentucky didn't, and nor did Tennessee.
Well,
they pitched their 3rd or 4th best to start off with.
Apparently, they believed they were good enough, and they were correct to get through that. But yeah, so a lot of times when you get around to that final elimination game, or if you wind up in a double elimination game, I mean, you're rolling guys out there who are like pitch an inning or two,
But bullpen, it's pitching by committee. That's correct. And it won't be the same in the Super Regional because it's just 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
There's just 2 teams in each Super Regional, and you got to win 2 games. So it's going to be your 1, 2, and 3.
Well, I think the Super Regional's fine, and I enjoy the World Series, but the regionals are the part
Yeah,
that
no,
I
it is
really
neat.
find
I
highly
agree.
entertaining.
It is.
Because you just never, and plus you end up, it's kind of the same thing, the NCAA tournament in basketball where you meet these players that you're like, I have no idea who this dude is, but he's highly entertaining.
Correct.
Or a lot of fun, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, I enjoy that, and this is one of my favorite kind of times of the year when it comes to college baseball. It doesn't hurt that some of the teams that I root for have been pretty good in recent years, I guess. So, that kind of thing probably doesn't hurt either. On the softball side,
we're in the World Series.
We're in the World Series, and it looks every year we look and we say, oh, well, it's Oklahoma and whomever else.
Well, they've won it 3 straight years.
Yes.
Now, they have more losses this year. In fact, as we're on the air right now, they're getting ready to lose to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida will have to beat them twice.
Yeah.
But on the other side is Texas is left. Texas has not left. And I think Stanford has to beat Texas twice.
Yeah.
And then the winner of the Texas-Stanford and the Florida-Oklahoma will face each other. Of course, it could be Texas and Oklahoma, 2 future SEC teams.
Yeah. With the second time in 3 years they've played each other in the championship.
Yeah, could be. Florida is shellacking right now. Oklahoma. But Oklahoma didn't throw their best pitcher. But, College World Series, it's been a premium to try to get runs. The pitchers are kind of dominated out there in the College World Series so far in softball, kind of the opposite of baseball. But, it's fun watching.
Well, and I was looking, I think Florida was a team that you said earlier this year, whenever I asked you earlier in the season, somebody to look out for.
Yeah.
That was a team you were impressed with.
Right.
Stanford is the one that looks like the dark horse that has popped
Well, they got
in
the
here.
dominant pitcher.
Yeah, that's right.
She's a dominant pitcher.
Yeah. I think they're the 8th seed or whatever in this. And they had gotten UCLA was the team that they knocked off to get here.
Correct.
And I think UCLA was the 4 seed.
Well, what's interesting about Florida is they got the player of the year who's a shortstop, who's just a tremendous player. But they've relied on a freshman pitcher, and it's almost old school. She's thrown close to 300 innings this year. She's thrown more than – they haven't used anybody else in the College World Series. So it's kind of the old school where we got one pitcher and she's pitching.
Riding this pony.
And she's hanging in there. She's going to beat Oklahoma, and we'll have to turn right around and beat them again because he's not going to anybody else.
Yeah. Well, it is fascinating. And they're kind of a scrappy program in recent years. And
the one loss they had, he did throw her like 2 innings and got behind 2-3-0 and basically just gave the game up. Mm-hmm. Took her out, saved her. And she, put somebody else in, and they got run ruled. But I think he did it just to have something left for the games he thought he could win.
Well, even though Oklahoma looks like they're going to lose this game, would you still think do you think they'll beat Texas? You think Texas can win it?
Well, they got to beat Florida again.
Well, that's true. I guess I'm getting past that. But you did point out they did not pitch their number 1 pitcher.
They did
today.
not. I still think Oklahoma is the favorite, even though they've got 1 loss and Texas has none as of right now.
Yeah.
But if they do get by Florida and play Texas, then it's 2 out of 3 in the finals.
Yeah. And so
two teams that know each other very well.
Yeah.
They're in the same conference and everything. So until somebody beats Oklahoma, they're the favorite. They've won it 3 in a row.
Yeah. I was going to say the funny thing is, what is it, next year? These two, they'll both
That's
Texas
what I
and
said.
Oklahoma be in the SEC?
They're moving to the SEC. That's
it'll be an SEC chalk next year. Unless somebody from what used to be the Pac-10, 12, wherever they may be now, can find a way in there. Because the West Coast is the only other place that's really been able to compete,
Florida
I guess.
State and ACC.
That's true.
Yep.
Florida State and the
But they
ACC.
only had 1 this year, and it's Duke.
Yeah. All right. This is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we didn't get a chance to talk about this headed into last week with the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, but as it turns out, those games were not those series were not close. A couple of the games were close, but the series were not close. Actually, outside of the final game, I think between the Timberwolves and Mavericks, all 4 of the other games were close.
Yes.
It's just that the Mavericks pretty much finished them all pretty
well. The Boston
well.
series was not close.
No part of it.
Yeah, Boston.
None of the games and not the series.
Boston has been the most. They have had a cakewalk.
Yes.
They have just they haven't been challenged at all.
No.
The Eastern Conference is not as good as the Western Conference, but Boston has really not had to face a whole lot of challenges. They're going to get challenged now.
Well, and the funny thing about Boston is not only was the Eastern Conference not as good, but the best players on the teams they played were very often injured or
That's
out.
correct. They were out.
So, I mean, they got the double whammy of playing weaker teams without their best players very often. And I guess for the most part, they've played well, and, even though they lost a couple of games, and it kind of makes you scratch your head, they even lost a couple of games. But every time they came back and won Game 3 decisively and wrapped up every series decisively.
Correct.
So, I mean, if you're going in right now, do you think Boston is better than the Mavericks? I mean, how do you assess this situation? The Mavericks, outside of that final series, I mean, they played against better teams. So are they the better team? Because they look. I
think most people think Boston has the best overall record in the league.
Yeah.
And they've got the two great players in Brown and Tatum.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have, I think the glue is the point guard they got from Milwaukee.
Yeah, Drew Holiday.
Just a great point guard, tough kid, and so forth. But for something tells me that Dallas is going to be hard to beat.
Yeah.
There's probably not a better player in the league than Luka.
Yeah.
He's finally this year decided to guard people. He's not as near the big liability he was in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's had 6, 7 triple doubles,
mm-hmm.
and I have to give Irvin Kyrie. I got to give him credit. I mean, he was one of my least favorite players the last 5-6 years. Just his attitude, wouldn't play. Just
had a complaint for everything.
Complain about everything. And since he's been to Dallas, he's almost like a brand new person. And I don't know if he's mature. I don't know what's happened, but I enjoy listening to him talk. He's very mature. When he talks, he takes responsibility. He's a great teammate with Luka.
Yeah, he knows the game extremely well.
He's always been unbelievably talented. But those two guards
mm-hmm.
are two of the best offensive players in the game. And then their role players are so good. The trade, and they got P.J. Washington, who's a former UK player from Charlotte. He's been great.
Right.
And the draft pick of the kid out of Duke,
mm-hmm.
who they've got long defenders.
They got Gafford from Washington, where he was just toiling away doing nothing.
I mean, they've made some unbelievable moves, and man, do they fit. The pieces fit with Dallas. And Dallas, the game's close late in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, they're hard to beat because Luka's a killer late in the game, and so is Kyrie. So I think it'd be a great series. I'd be shocked if it doesn't go 6 or 7.
You mentioned the late in the game. I think that's the thing you just hit upon as far as how I feel about these two teams. Late in the game, and I feel like we've seen the Mavericks do this in their series in the West. They finish games well. They always seem to be able to finish with the last 8-2 run, 10-0 run, that kind of thing. The Celtics historically are not. This group has not done that well. They have not closed games well. They've often floundered away at the end of games trying to find offense and that kind of stuff. And that's the thing that I don't know if we've seen the answer to that yet, because the games they won in their Eastern Conference series were pretty much all blowouts.
Yeah.
So we don't know. The thing that we've learned about the Mavericks, we have no clue about the Celtics.
Boston has been there more than Dallas,
yeah.
But they've not been challenged at all this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Dallas has been toughened, so we'll see.
Yeah. And going back to the Kyrie thing real quick, you think about his days with the Cavaliers playing next to LeBron James. He strikes me as the kind of guy, and maybe he's learned this about himself, that he is not second fiddle, but he's the other guy. If there's a superstar on the team, he's the other guy.
Yeah, well, he didn't act that way at New Jersey.
No.
He was the other guy to Kevin Durant, but he didn't act that way.
But Kevin Durant doesn't exactly act like that guy. So,
or James Harden.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can see where he didn't work there.
I mean, I've enjoyed watching him and listening to him.
Yeah. So I'm glad to see that rebirth of him as a player, and you're right, because he is a lot of fun to watch play basketball. Meanwhile, I want to kind of talk about Caitlin Clark's introduction to professional sports. It made me think of Shaquille O'Neal in the All-Star game his rookie year, where basically they all kind of just abused him, if you remember this. I believe it was David Robinson and Hakeem Olajuwon and whomever on the Western Conference All-Star team. I mean, every time he touched the ball, they double-teamed him, they fouled him, they beat him up in the All-Star game. And I feel like maybe Caitlin Clark's kind of getting this introduction to professional sports. These are people getting paid, and they kind of take some of your antics a little bit personal, but also some of this has got to be also jealousy and some of the actions that have been taken toward her as well.
Yeah, this is, I tell you what, it's been a little bit unsettling, to be honest with you. First of all, the WNBA has a gold mine in Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
And in their greed, they have not handled this at all.
Well, they played too many games.
They played
to
way
start
too
the
many
season.
games. They've already played 12 games, and I think the defending champion Las Vegas Aces only played 6.
Yes.
Plus, they played West Coast. They've already been to the West Coast, Seattle, L.A., played the New York Liberty, the second best team in the league, already 3 times. They've had 2 back-to-backs. I mean, they've overused her and have worn them down personally.
Yeah.
And then you add the situation. You know, obviously, if you're a competitor, you want to step up and play against her. But there's a difference between being tough and being cheap-shotted. And the last thing, you know, against Chicago, when the girl out of Texas A&M, Kennedy Carter, without the ball, just comes up and just body checks her, knocks her down, and then cusses at her. That's. And she didn't even get a technical or a flagrant. That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, in the moment she didn't.
Didn't get thrown out. Nothing.
Yeah.
It didn't happen to after the game that the WNBA decided to reassess it.
Yeah.
So there's some things going on, and then Angel Reese, who tries to play both the good guy and the villain all in the same time. You know, at one time says, you know, that she's cool with Caitlin Clark, but then she makes comments that look, we sold it out without her here. And then, you know, starts cheering and high-fiving after the foul, you know, starts cheering. You see her on the bench and high-fiving, laughing at it. You know, there is some animosity in the league. And it kind of goes back to why, you know, in the past, I think, you know, listen, there's some great players in the league, but at times they have not been the most, I don't know, there are some players in the league that oftentimes are not the most appealing to watch. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And the league is going to have.
When you say that, you mean style of basketball,
just
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
just things like that. Just like, you know, Caitlin Clark is giving the league eyeballs to watch.
Yeah.
Just like Iowa did, and people watched it and enjoyed it. They should not bow down to Caitlin Clark.
No.
But you cannot do some of the things they're doing as well.
Yeah.
Both the WNBA and some of the individual players. They have an opportunity to really expand the game. What I've seen so far, watching her, she's wore out and so forth, and some of the cheap shots, I don't think is a good look for the league.
And, you know, one of the things, real quick before we get out of here, there were 2 things I was going to point out.
And I haven't seen her teammates rally behind her a lot either.
No, and this goes back to what I said about some of her antics while she was at Iowa. They aren't going to fly in the pros, and she's going to have to chill that nonsense out.
The flopping and then complaining. I agree with that.
I mean, you know, and some of her jawing with people, that kind of thing. I mean, you're gonna get some of this, but at the same time, some people are kind of thinking of this as a white-black thing. But Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu also had the same response to her. You know, they were both very down on her, and they're both white women, and they're maybe the 2 best players in the league. So it's curious to see how it's going to play out, but I think it starts with the WNBA just playing too many games for the Fever early in the season. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.